In this region, in SADC, the RTG, our RTG current currency, is the strongest currency in the region.
You don't understand where they're coming from. ED and Mthuli, which planet do you live? Which planet do you live on?
Mochane nyuana babai, Jimmy Magalamba kuterera masho, Nodiwana musiki, Jonaiga, Chitanika.
Zvinhu zvakarongeka.
Mutengo wehuku wakutenga sai. Mutengo wehuku wakutenga sai.
Welcome to this edition of Free Talk, where we are going to be delving into the 2022 national budget. We're going to be understanding whether the budget has the oomph to make 2022 a better year for the people of Zimbabwe economically, and also alleviate the plight of most of the suffering Zimbabweans. Now, Zimbabwe's government has said that it's got a vision of making sure that we reach a middle-income economy by 2030. Now, these are the steps of getting there. Are we getting there? Is this mere rhetoric, or this is the money that makes sense, that is going to change the lives of the people? Now, to help me discuss this issue, I'm joined by the former Finance Minister of Zimbabwe and the MDC-Alliance Vice President, Biti, who's going to help us look into some of the aspects of the budget that was presented by the Finance Minister, Mthuli Ncube. Now, this is the Free Talk in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. With me, your host, as usual, Dara Blessed Mhlanga on Heart and Soul TV and radio. Welcome, Mr. Biti, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Blessed.
Yes. Now let's just go to the crux. Now, Mr. Mthuli Ncube presented a 927.3 billion budget. What are the major highlights of this budget, if there are any?
Well, with great respect, this is one of the most dishonest budgets ever presented. It's a technically unsound budget. It doesn't meet the test for credibility. And as I've said consistently, this was a man just going through a ritualistic formality simply because Section 302 of the Constitution demands that he has to go through the process. The budget is not credible at all. You have just said that it is a 900 billion Zimbabwean dollar budget using an exchange rate of 1:105, which was the official exchange rate on the day that he presented the budget on the 27th of November 2021. It is an 8.7 billion US dollar budget. This economy can collect 8.7 billion US dollars in an economy where more than 90% of our people are unemployed, where more than 70% are in the informal sector, where according to the World Bank, 50% of the people are living in extreme poverty. And according to other reports, 79% of the people are living in extreme poverty. You can't collect that kind of revenue. And we know again that in the same budget, he makes the admission that by September of 2021, he had collected around 300 billion Zimbabwean dollars, and he is hoping to collect by 30th of December 2021 around 450 billion dollars. How does 450 billion dollars double up to almost $1 trillion in the following year when your growth rate is 5.5%? So if you're going to collect 400 billion Zimbabwean dollars and your growth rate is 5.5%, it means that you are only going to collect 5.5% of $400 billion. But to double that to $900 billion or $8 billion doesn't make sense. It's a lie. It's a fiction. So there's no credibility in this budget on that point. I start with that point. Number two is the disbursements, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. If you look at that, the 2021 budget, according to the budget statement, there is by September of 2021, 60% of the same had been disbursed. So in other words, budget performance is 60%. But when you look closely at the votes, you will find that there's been an average disbursement of 31%, particularly to the ministries that matter, particularly to the ministries where our people are found, which is education, which is health, which is environment. There's environmental, degradation, trade and commerce, and so forth. There's a 31% disbursement by September, meaning that members of parliament sit to pass the budget, but the budget doesn't deliver. The budget doesn't perform. There are no disbursements. But there are 4 ministries where there's been overspending. And the worst ministry is actually the Ministry of Finance itself. By September of 2021, it would overspend its money by 150%. Then the Office of the President and Cabinet, 114%. Then Defense, then Home Affairs. So if you take these 4 ministries now, whose average is 130%, they pull the average of 31% to 60%. But the bottom line is that you've got a budget that is fictitious, a budget that is not performing. For 4 ministries, it is overperforming. So in other words, there's no point in pretending to budget, because the Office of the President and Cabinet will get whatever it wants. The Ministry of Finance itself will get whatever it wants. The Ministry of Home Affairs will get whatever it wants. But the ministries that matter, where our people are, health, they don't get anything. 31%. Ministries that matter, the Auditor General's office, 25%, there's underperformance. There's a myth. So that's big lie number 2 about this budget. Big lie number 3, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, is the projected 5.5% growth rate. The 2021 growth rate is predicted to be a 7.8%. And the major driver of that 7.8% is a 36% growth in agriculture. Our agriculture did well, 36%. But for 2022, agriculture is going to grow by less than 10%. So that was the driver in 2021. In 2022, it's projected to have a modest growth rate. So where is the 5.5% coming from? Now, if you read the budget statement, they say, the underlying assumption, they say we'll have a good rain season. But you and I know that today is the 7th of December, 8th of December. There have been no rains. So we already know that it's going to be an erratic rain season. Farmers right now, some of them will tell you that we are now actually replanting. Other farmers will actually tell you that where we were going to put long-term maize, we are now going to plant 400 or 500, which are short-term maize breeds, maize types. Underlying assumption, COVID will be brought down. COVID will be stabilized. But Dara blessed, as I'm talking to you right now, Omicron has taken over. Borders have been closed. Our people are dying left, right, and center. Another underlying assumption, stable exchange rate. Now that's a joke. 4th Street has gone wild. Dara blessed Mhlang. The parallel market rate, as I'm talking to you right now, is 220. You can buy, you can sell the US dollar right now for 200, for 198. So there's not going to be a stable exchange rate, which brings me to the biggest lie of this budget. We know it's a $1 trillion budget. 977 is a lot of money. But what is the exchange rate that the minister has used? What is the exchange rate that the minister has used? Unless you identify the exchange rate, it's a fiction. Because the exchange rate is fluctuating every single day. At the day that he made the budget, it was 1 to 105. Right now, I can tell you before the end of the year, the official exchange rate, I'm not talking about the 4th Street. I'm talking about the official exchange rate. The official exchange rate would be 1 is to 120, rendering nullity, rendering negatory the budget. So, 2 things. Unless you are going to budget in US dollars, stop wasting our time. 2, if you present a budget which doesn't deal with the biggest challenge that this economy is facing, you have done nothing. What is the biggest challenge, Dara Blessed Mklanga? It is the fact that the de-dollarization experiment has failed and failed in absolute terms. The government itself is the biggest body to acknowledge that dollarization has failed. It is pretending to pay civil servants bonuses in US dollars. Why US dollars? Because the government itself does not believe in its own currency. It has imposed a tax on brand new phones of US $50, not in local currency, in US dollars. It has increased so many taxes in US dollars, not in local currency. So the biggest exposer of the myth of the Zimbabwean dollar is the government itself. So why do we need to pretend that the Zimbabwean dollar is working when it's not working? So as long as the government pretends that de-dollarization is working, the economy will not move. Dololo, it's an absolute failure, an absolute myth. So the budget is a yawn. It's not worth the paper it is written. It's technically unsound as long as it is based on a fluctuating, fiercely mobile exchange rate. And that's the challenge it faces.
But Mr. Biti, you talk about this being fictitious and that Zimbabwe will not be able to raise 900 billion, as it put. But the Minister of Mines has said that we are looking towards building a massive economy around mining, and we have seen performance in platinum, we have seen performance in gold. Is this not what will anchor our budget as we go forward?
The desire to make the mining industry a $24 billion industry is aspiratory. It is the intention of the government. With a good, clean government, it is possible to make mining a major anchor of our economy, precisely because we have over 64 minerals in this country, and in respect of 3 or 4 of them, we have got world-class deposits. So we've got world-class deposits of gold, we've got world-class deposits of platinum, we've world-class deposits of chrome, and we've got world-class deposits of diamonds.
So the budget is not fictitious then, because
Let me make one thing clear. the budget only gets revenue in the form of taxes. So if Zimplats builds a $10 billion mine, it doesn't mean the government is getting $10 billion. It's only getting whatever is the tax rate, 25%, 30% for mining. So it's a very small amount, which is why other countries, resource-rich countries, have imposed a wealth tax of 45% to get proper remuneration from your minerals. We haven't. We don't have such a law. We don't have such infrastructure. But the biggest problem, you need investment to translate that which is underground into income. You need billions and billions of dollars just to build a simple platinum refinery. You need at least US $500 million. That's a huge investment. But as long as you don't have a platinum refinery, the likes of Zimplats are going to steal from you, as they are in fact doing today. Namhla Katesi. Platinum, when you mine an ore of platinum, it has 10 derivatives. There are 10 other metals, including palladium, including zinc. Now, if you don't have your own refinery, they will take that ore out as they are doing, take it to South Africa, take it to Australia, take it to Dubai, where they refine it and only declare one metal, platinum, not the other 9 metals. So you'll continue losing. So the bottom line is that we need to attract foreign direct investment so that the mineral wealth that is underground can be transformed into an asset with the live value. At the present moment, it's dead, dead capital. But how do you attract foreign direct investment when you are converting people's monies, people's pensions, people's US dollar deposits into worthless currency through statutory instruments such as SI 33 of 2019, through statutory instruments such as 142 of 2019, through statutory instruments such as 175 of 2021. You keep on reproducing predatory, extractive monetary policies that make the investor lose money. Two, how can you invest when there's so much corruption? When there's so much rent-seeking activities and arbitrage in this economy? That is why our average investment in the last 5 years has been US $200 million. When countries like Zambia has been $2 billion. Mozambique, even despite the war, $5 billion.
I want to go to the impact of the IMF funds to the 2022 budget. What is it? To what extent does the IMF funds impact our budget? Because the budget statements in itself, it says that it is going to put the bulk of IMF funds into agriculture, primary and secondary education, and also into health.
Yeah, no. So now the problem with the IMF SDR fund is that the minister did not comply with the Zimbabwean law. Zimbabwean law, the constitution says every cent that the government receives must be credited to the consolidated revenue fund. And equally, every withdrawal and every levy on the consolidated revenue fund must be accounted for. So the minister should have accounted to Parliament the use of the SDR and say to Parliament, I received $1 billion. $200 million is going to, I received $1 billion. And I'm going to spend it this way. He didn't do that. He did not do that. And also that $1 billion is not in the blue book. In other words, he didn't appropriate it. So it remains a private slush fund. So I hope members of Parliament, and I hope the Budget and Finance Committee is going to raise stink over this issue that the minister did not actually comply with the Constitution in accounting to Parliament, in crediting the Consolidated Revenue Fund with the $1 billion, and then in debiting the Consolidated Revenue Fund with the $1 billion in respect of where he proposes to spend the money. What concerns me is that, apart from that, is that the bulk of this money is actually going to, and already $350 million of that money has already been taken to go and finance the auction floor, the rigged auction system. But you and I know that the auction system is saving a few elites. Only 26% of people that are applying have been saved. Only 26% of Zimbabweans have been saved. The rest, like you and me, are getting our money from 4th Street, from Roodport, including huge companies. Now you've got the elites now, the who is who of ZANU-PF. What I've described to you before as roving bandits. You've got roving bandits that are going to the auction floor to access the US dollar at a paltry amount of US of 1:80, and then they go and sell it on the black market at 1:175. Get a lot of RTGS, go back to the auction floor. So the SDR is going to feed the beast. What is the beast? It is this insatiable creature called corruption, run by ZANU-PF, whose list looks like the who is who of ZANU-PF, the Politburo of ZANU-PF. And that is unfair, to have money that would actually otherwise be used for construction, for health, for COVID, for schools, be funneled to a platform where the super rich are extracting wealth from the people of Zimbabwe. And it's not going to benefit Zimbabweans.
But isn't Zimbabwe funding construction of roads, construction of dams that we have seen, and construction even of learning institutions like universities, where we have seen a number of infrastructure coming up?
You know, Dara Blessed, you can't put lipstick on a crocodile. So you can't patch up a few roads and say it is infrastructure. I went to Gutu on Saturday for the unveiling of the tombstone of Gogo Chamisa, our president's late mother. May her soul rest in peace. So you've got little patches of that road that have been done. And they're going to do it. By 2023, I'm sure they would have completed that road. But once you turn from that main road and go to Chiwara village in rural Guto, you've got roads that are prehistoric. Roads that even Mbuyane Handa wouldn't have used, should have preferred to use the road. And those are 90% of the roads in this country. So you can't scratch this road and that road 41 years after independence and say Mnangagwa's republic is looking after infrastructure. It is not looking after infrastructure. 70% of our people, 41 years after independence, are still using the bush as a toilet. And in some provinces, it's as high as 85%. 70% of our people do not have access to electricity. There are some suburbs in Harare, like Mavuku, where children have never seen water coming out of a tap. If they see a tap, they will think it's an instrument to beat up a mommy. And I say so in the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. You have no gross capital formation in Zimbabwe. When was the last time you saw a crane in Zimbabwe? Many years ago. If you wake up somebody who died in 1968 and you put him in Samora Machel Avenue, that person won't get lost because there have been no new buildings other than 80 Samora Machel Avenue, the new Reserve Bank building. The only thing that person will be confused is because where she left Jameson Avenue is now Samora Machel Avenue. Where she left Moshford Street is now Takawira Avenue. Where she left Stanley Avenue is now Jason Moy Avenue. Where she left Baker Avenue is now Nelson Mandela Avenue. There is no gross capital formation. You can't see any crane in Zimbabwe. There is no development without cranes, without construction. Don't be fooled by lipstick that is scratching the surface. And the other thing, why are these contracts not going to tender? If you take that Bulawayo Road, 5 companies are doing it. 5 companies wouldn't go to tender. Beautycam, Kudata Gwires company, Fosu Construction, it has got the bulk of the road, 69%. A little company called is it Mangwana? It's the one that did Mbuyane and in thing Masimba Construction. 5 of them, they haven't gone to tender. Go to Bait Bridge. Bait Bridge was given to one of Emerson's friends, Glenn Cohen. It's going to cost more than 200 million, much more than Kazungula, a bridge. So what you are calling construction is just extraction, money for the boys, money for the boys. There's no value for money. So don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. There's corruption.
But the budget here realizes that and provides 334 billion in capital expenditure, which is basically meant to ensure that we get to that aspect of investment.
3 things, Dara Blessed. If you divide 330 billion Zimbabwean dollars divided by the black market rate of 191, it's nothing. That's number 1. Number 2, there is a difference between proclaiming a figure and allocation. I've already demonstrated that the 2021 budget, only 31% of it was allocated. The rest is fiction. So don't be fooled. We've had 41 years of independence, but our infrastructure is pathetic. Zimbabwe has got a stretch of road of 100,000 kilometers. Less than 8% of it is paved or tarred, the word we use in the ghetto. And that which is tarred, it was done by Ian Douglas Smith or the Bulawayo Plumtree Forbes border, which was done by the government of national unity. And it's the best road we have in Zimbabwe at the moment.
Let us look at some who say that this budget is pro-poor. It actually widens the tax band. It also provides something for the poor people in Zimbabwe to be able to smile during this festive season and going into 2022.
The regime has got a problem of trying to prop that which is unproppable. As long as the budget was not in US dollars, people are suffering. All our expenses are in US dollars, from rent to fuel to government's own taxes. If you want a number plate, you have to pay US dollars. If you want a passport, you have to pay US dollars. Yet we are earning in local currency. Civil servants were earning US $500 before the de-dollarization process. They're now earning an average of US 35 dollars. So money is actually being taken away from civil servants. Civil servants are actually subsidizing the government, because any civil servant who works for 30 days and pays rent in US dollars, fuels his car in US dollars, by the end of the day, he is actually in net deficit just by going to work, which is why in the last 2 years, Dara Blessed Clan, 40-50% of our teachers have not going to work because they are better off staying at home and not earning any money. That's number 1. Number 2, you've got an oppressive regime of taxes. Number 1 is the intermediated transfer tax of 2%. That is so sort of 5%. That is so oppressive. It makes the cost of money to go up. It makes transaction charges to go up. Then you've got taxes everywhere. Look at our fuel. Our fuel is the most expensive in sub-Saharan Africa because of taxes, carbon tax, Noxim debt redemption levy, and so forth. It's tax after tax, tax after tax. Then you've got other taxes that they've introduced. How do you put $50 on a mobile phone? These mobile phones, I see you are holding a Govt. A Govt is a small phone called Mthuli. It costs $18, $12, but the new tax is now going to cost $12 plus $50. So you want now what children who are using mobile phones to study because of COVID, our grandmothers in Lotito to fail to afford mobile phones. Motor vehicles. Zimbabwe has got a collapsed public transport system. Now there's a law that says if you are going to import a car that is under the age of 10 years, you pay duty in US dollars. It becomes so prohibitive. You talk of the threshold. The threshold is nothing. What is 50,000 RTGS? The threshold. The threshold should have been $1 million, dollars for it to be meaningful. So Zimbabweans are the most taxed people in sub-Saharan Africa. This budget is funded 96% by the taxpayer. Countries like Uganda, Malawi, most countries, the budget is only funded 16% directly by the taxpayer. So we are overtaxed, and it's not a people budget at all. But it's not a pro-poor budget at all.
How does 96% of the budget come from taxpayers when you say that the people in Zimbabwe actually are very poor, and how are they funding these taxes? Where are they getting the money?
Because the sources of funding are from taxes, which is the people. So if you read, they're expecting that they're going to fund it through taxes, through you and me. Whereas a normal budget has got different sources of income, including overseas development assistance. In other words, donor assistance, including multilateral assistance, grants that you get from the World Bank, the African Development Bank, so that at the end of the day, your taxes only fund a small part of the budget. Here is the opposite.
But my question remains unanswered. How do people without money pay tax?
So you're mixing two things. The first thing is that they've budgeted for a 900 billion budget. How do they expect it to be funded? They expect it to be funded by taxes. The second question, which is what I've already alluded to, but that's a fiction. They're not going to get the $900 billion because the people don't get money. So there are two sides to it. First, burdening the people with something that is not achievable.
This budget, as Mthuli was presenting it, looks at ramping up production. And in his attempt to ramp up production so that we could have money or investment in this country, he proposed that there's capital equipment worth at least US 10,000 can be imported duty-free. Is that not a good enough incentive to see us get production?
Once again, you don't do things that favor the rich. This is an informalized economy. So the majority of our people are into small and medium enterprises. If you go to Glenview, you will see a huge informal factory of artisans making furniture. That person will never afford equipment of US $10,000 and more. What that person simply wants is a table, is an electric grinder, is an electric cutter. You know the ones I'm talking about. They cut wood electrically. All in all, it won't cost him more than 10,000 rand, which is around 400, 500 US dollars. That is where the tax-free component should have been given. So instead of saying anything above 10,000, he should actually have said anything below 10,000, because that's where you find most of our people. I've got friends, for instance, who are into farming. A planter costs 2,000 US dollars. A planter costs 2,000 US dollars. Give me duty-free the planter, because that's where our people are. A reaper costs 2,000 US dollars. Give me $2,000 for a reaper. $10,000, you are benefiting the big boys. You are not benefiting where the majority of people are, and the majority of people are into Model A1 farming. So they need a small planter, they need a small sheller, they need a small generator, they need a small compressor, they need a wood cutter, they need a welding machine, they need a grinder. All those things are way below $1,000 US dollars. So give them duty-free things, not $10,000. $10,000 is Delta Corporation. $10,000 is Chibuku breweries. The rich who don't need that because they're already rich.
But is it not the idea to ramp up the big companies so that production, we move from an informal economy?
The economy has been informalized.
And is this not an attempt to move it back to a formal economy?
To move to informal economy, you promote and give incentives to the SME so that the small to medium enterprise becomes a medium enterprise, becomes a big enterprise. Look at Germany. Germany is one of the most industrialized countries in the world. But after the Second World War, the government concentrated on small family-run companies, SMEs. So you've got small companies run by families employing 500 people. That is the trick. So the trick is actually to promote the small person by giving incentives to the small person. That is what the government should have done. That is what the budget should have done.
The budget is also looking at paying our creditors. Now, Minister Mthuli Ncube said between January and September 2021, Treasury paid US $44.2 million to external creditors. These payments to activate portfolios and token payments to international financial institutions and bilateral Paris Club creditors. Is this not a good move for us?
I'm glad you have brought out the question of debt. Because the question of debt is another lie that the budget maintains. So the budget maintains two lies. First is the lie that has been maintained in the last 4 years that Mthuli has been Minister of Finance, which is the lie of surpluses. In fact, Mthuli's middle name is Mthuli Mr. Surplus Ncube. Some will say Mr. Mthuli Surplus Liar Ncube, but I don't belong to that. So the myth of surpluses have been maintained. But we know he has not been running surpluses. Even this budget, he is proposing a 1.5% deficit of $7.6 billion as a deficit. But there is $3.4 billion that he is going to assume from the Reserve Bank. $3.4 billion US. That is going to be assumed from the RBZ. And in the first quarter of next year, Parliament will approve a debt assumption bill of $3.4 billion. A few years after 2015, when Parliament passed an RBZ debt assumption bill where it assumed $1.5 billion, as you and I know. Now, what he has been doing is, he has been hiding his deficits at the RBZ. The RBZ has been printing money through treasury bills, contracting debt, borrowing from the African import and export debt, which has been used to support command agriculture, to support fiscal obligations so that Mthuli can pretend that he has got a surplus. So people of Zimbabwe must demand the audit of this $3.4 billion. Where did this money actually go to? And the Parliament must demand that there be a condonation bill in an appropriation bill with regards to the 3.4 billion. Now I want to come to debt. Again, another lie is maintained. The lie that is maintained is that our sovereign debt is around 12 billion US dollars. But that is a lie. So I'll give you the breakdown of the debt. We owe 2 billion US dollars to the World Bank. We owe $5.4 billion to the Paris Club of Lenders. So we are now on 7.5. We owe $600 million to the African Development Bank. That is unpaid. We owe in excess of $8 billion to the Chinese. And one of the things you won't find in his books is a full disclosure of how much we actually owe to the Chinese. Then we owe between $5 and $8 billion to the African Import and Export Bank, the HStvZim Bank, which debt is housed at the RBZ. So that in reality, our debt is between $18 billion and $22 billion. Now, if that is the true state of the debt, what is $44 million? It's nothing. It's less than 0.05%. It's nothing. But the truth of the matter, Dara Blessed, is that Zimbabwe is incapable. It does not have the resources of paying its external debt. which by the way is unsustainable. It's over 90% of GDP when the yardstick is 60% of GDP. Once you owe over 60% of GDP, it's unsustainable. When we were young, we used to say, musoro wakazvimba nezvikwereti. Dai Zimbabwe iri munhu, ingadai chinzi musoro weZimbabwe wakazvimba nezvikwereti. Every child who is being born today, I know you've got daughters, Dara blessed. Your daughters, we have nothing to do with the mismanagement of this country. Each one of them, go and tell them this evening when you see them, they owe US $300,000. That is unfair on the poor little girls. It's most unfair on Zimbabwe. It's most unfair on you. It's most unfair on me. Now we go to another myth. I'm talking about debt now. Mthuli says we want to pay our debt now, and we are going to use HIPC. You have read about that. HIPC is highly indebted poor country. So if you are highly indebted poor country, you qualify for HIPC. You qualify for HIPC. HIPC is a program that was invented by the group of 7 G8 countries way back in 2004 when Tony Blair was Prime Minister, Gordon Brown was the Secretary of the Exchequer and so forth. The rich countries came up with a program called the Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative to help poor countries, very poor countries. Now, you at the beginning of this program said Zimbabwe wants to be a middle-income country by 2030. If you read Mthuli Ncube's NDS documents, he says we want to be an upper-tier middle-income country because we are already a middle-tier income country. If you are middle-income, you are not low-income. Therefore, you are not poor. Therefore, you don't qualify for HIPC. But in making the admission that he wants to apply for HIPC, he is in fact saying we are not middle income, we are not even upper middle income, and we will never reach middle income. That's why we want to be HIPC. I have no problem with HIPC myself. But HIPC, my brother, requires political reforms. You can't get HIPC because what happens in HIPC is that the rich countries who owe you simply forgive your debt, cancel your debt, but they will cancel your debt on 2 reasons. Number one, you must have run your economy so well that you will not be able to go back in another debt trap. But if you are going to accumulate debt as Mthuli Ncube is doing, and if you are going to be corrupt, you will not pass. And you already know that Zimbabwe has gone through 3 SMPs since 2014. SMPs are staff monitored programs. This is an agreement where you enter into with the IMF and you say, I want to achieve these targets. Zimbabwe has failed 3 staff monitored programs already. So when you fail, and those were lower tier, those were low expectations. When you are now going for HIPC, it's an upper tier. There are higher expectations. They failed 3 lower tier programs. They will never be able to pass a single, not this government, Chamisa's government, but not this government. They're now like Sudan. Sudan has gone through hundreds of SMPs and they failed. There are 3 countries on the African continent who are perennially stuck in debt. It's Zimbabwe, it's Sudan, because of Sudan, and of course, small countries like Eritrea. So that is the problem. But the point I wanted to make is that how can you say you are middle income and then behind the night you are going HIPC? HIPC is low income. HIPC means you can't be middle income. That's why he says in his document, we want to be reclassified from middle income that he has been claiming to a low income. So it is a dog's breakfast, which is why I said this budget is the most unsound, the most incredible, the most ridiculous, the most technically unsound budget that has been presented in the history of budgets in this country.
Let's look at, let me turn your focus to inflation. Now, the budget the budget says that annual inflation is projected to end the year between 52% and 58%. from a revised target of 25 to 35%. Now, inflation had gone up, as we all know, to around 1,000%. Is this not a sign of being able to manage the economy by reducing levels of inflation?
The figures, the projected figures of inflation have no credibility at all. His own budget budgets 100% inflation. Because in his budget, he says I'll collect revenue of 800 billion in 2022. But in 2021, I'll collect 400 billion. But the growth rate is only 5%, meaning he is actually saying inflation is going to make me receive more money. And so his own figures budget 100% inflation figure already, which is beyond the 58% that he's talking about. But if you live in Zimbabwe, and Mthuli doesn't live in Zimbabwe, maybe in Switzerland. If you live in Zimbabwe, you know that the price of goods are going up. And you know that the price of goods is actually going up in US dollar terms. And why is the price of goods going up? It is because there is too much Zimbabwean dollar chasing too few goods. Number two, it is because we have commodified the US dollar. The US dollar is now a commodity. Contrary to the period of the GNU, where you could go into an ATM and withdraw $5,000, $100,000, we now have a commodity called the US dollar that is in short supply. Now, when you have got a commodity where there's too much demand and little supply, the price of that commodity goes up. So, which is why we have seen an exponential growth in the price of the US dollar on the black market. We started off at 1:15, 1:25, 1:30. As I'm talking to you right now, the official exchange rate is now US $220. Now, if you want to see real inflation, go check the price of bread. Go check the price of lacto milk. Go check the price of lacto milk. Those two things will go check the price of a 2 liter of mazoe. The inflation of those three commodities that I've given you is more than 200%. It's more than 200%.
Why specifically those?
They are at the epicenter of the consumer price index. When you measure inflation, economists put a basket of goods that are used day to day by the average family in the country. So the average family eats bread. The average family eats cooking fat. Mukadzi wese muZimbabwe anoshandisa mafuta. The average family inomwa mukaka, inomwa tea. You understand? So these goods are at the epicenter of so you can rig the economy, but you can't rig the price of these goods. They are at the heart of a household. So that's why they are so excellent in tracking inflation. So any Zimbabwean can track them. So if you track the price of bread, the price of milk, of cooking fat, it will tell you real inflation. And if you go to these goods, you will see that in the past 2 months alone, they've gone up. They've gone up by a factor of more than 50%. So real inflation in Zimbabwe right now is actually around 281%. It's actually around 281%. And part of the thing that causes inflation, apart from the commodification of the US dollar, is the multiple pricing regimes that we have in this country. No country can survive when it's operating on the basis of five pricing regimes. So we have got prices of US dollar cash. You know what I'm talking about. We have got prices of RTGS transfer. We've got prices of Zipit transfer. We've got prices of EcoCash. Then we've got prices of the bond note. If you go with cash, bond note, there's a price, different price. Who can survive that? What country can survive that? So there is so much inflation pressures in the economy that it has to go up. Too much money chasing too few goods. It's called a crisis of overaccumulation. We've accumulated a lot of Zimbabwean dollars, a lot of useless money, which is chasing too few goods. So there is a fundamental inflation pressure. So we've gone back to the past. We've gone back to 2008, 2009, where we were all millionaires, but poor millionaires. We were earning trillions. The last note that our central bank printed was $100,000 trillion note, but it couldn't buy you 2 bottles of soda. We now have that same, contradiction. So people will have 400,000 Zimbabwean dollars in his account. It can buy you a goat at Mbuzi there. So it's mismanaged. Mthuli has taken the economy worse than Patrick Chamisa. He claims to be an economics. Hakuna economist akadaro. Inema zvokwadi namaizororo. Hakuna economist akadaro.
But what could you have done differently apart from this criticism? What would you have done differently?
The starting point is to re-dollarize. The starting point is to go back to the US dollar. I have no problem in those who will say, let's keep our currency, we keep it for change. But when we do that, we liberalize the exchange rate. So if the black market is 191, that is the official exchange rate. You don't control the exchange rate. Number two, which is part of dollarization, pay workers in US dollars. Pay workers in US dollars. And when you do that, the price of goods will come down. The price of goods will come down because we then internationalize and regionalize prices. The prices in South Africa will be the same as the prices in Zimbabwe because the US dollar is the same. But Zimbabweans are suffering because of these multiple distortions that I've spoken about. These multiple layers of arbitrage that I've spoken about. So currency reform, foreign exchange reform, protect the workers in two respects, pay his wages in US dollars and protect his pension. We must implement the result of the Justice Smith Commission that says the government caused the loss of $5.86 billion worth of pensions. Pensions must be de-dollarized so that pensioners who are in their 60s, 70s can begin to earn US dollar pensions. 3, let's live within our means. Let's eat what we kill. Let's maintain a regime of cash budgeting. Strict economics. If you kill a rat, you must eat a rat. But when you kill a rat and you call the whole village and you behave as if you have slaughtered an elephant, and we see Lamborghinis and Ferraris, we see their children, their mistresses driving these fancy vehicles, it doesn't work. The biggest and greatest economics are my Ezra in Ngai, my Banda in Lotito, because they know that if her husband earns $20, she will spend $20. If the husband earns $20, you can't spend $40. Because in economics, 1 minus 2, it can't. If you find 1 minus 2 equals to minus 1, you've got a problem. And that's the problem with Mthuli Ncube. He is living beyond his means. And this government runs an expansionary fiscal policy. They are printing money to finance what you call road construction. They are printing billions of dollars to support command agriculture. They are printing billions of dollars to finance their illicit privatization program, the purchase of shares of NASA in First Mutual Life, the purchase of 60% shareholding by the RBZ in Fidelity Printing and Gold, the purchase of shares in Bindura Nickel BNC, the purchase of shares in ZIM Alloys. They are printing money. That's why dealers have got money and they're flooding 4th Street. And once you flood 4th Street, the dollar goes up. So the dollar is responding to the crisis of overaccumulation. Too much ZIM dollars, broad money supply, what economists call broad money supply, which is money in circulation, has doubled up in the last few months. And so when you have got too much money chasing too few goods, things go around. So how do you control broad money supply? You live within your means. So that's number 3. Number 4, put money where our people are. Put money in social services. Let's fight this COVID. So put real US dollars in the fight against COVID. Have a fiscal package for workers that are fighting COVID. The government must give grants of between US $30, US $50 to workers, including unemployed grants, to fight this disease. But this disease requires medication. This disease requires people that are eating, that are healthy, and so forth. We know already from reports by the WFP that 3 million people, notwithstanding the good rains, 3 million people need to be fed right now as I'm talking to you right now. And with these terrible rains that are not coming, it's going to be worse. So put money in health, put money in education, give social grants. Number 4, let's deal with corruption. Corruption is a cancer, particularly the 7 commanding heights of corruption, which are, number 1, the Reserve Bank and the US dollar. The Reserve Bank needs to be shut down. We need a currency board. The Reserve Bank has become a haven of shenanigans. The Reserve Bank has become a football pitch of corruption. The Reserve Bank has become the jurisdiction of what I've described as roving bandits. Zvigananda zvinoenda kumaruzevha zvinobikirwa doro rekondoba zvichiombererwa maoko soti ya chendai mooba. So it needs to be shut down, and we have a currency board. 2, haven of corruption fuel. Who controls fuel? Tagwirei. Who is selling retail fuel? Tagwirei and Zuva and Puma. How can we have a country like that? 3, command agriculture. Command agriculture is nothing but a home of extraction. 4, privatizations. Banks have been privatized. Shares owned by public bodies, First Mutual Life, have been privatized. Gold mines have been privatized. Kudata Gure now owns 11 gold mines. So privatization is extraction. 5 is our minerals. There's corruption in platinum. There's corruption in gold. There's corruption in diamonds. I can write a book about diamond extraction. $15 billion was lost in over three years. Much of it went to Dubai, to India, to China, it's ridiculous. Corruption around our minerals. Next is corruption around our land. There are land barons everywhere. The likes of Ken Sharp and others that I don't own. A person will create a new suburb that he never paid for. There's a suburb called Pomona City. There's a company called West Park, Zvigananda, Zvikuba, and so forth. So land has become a forum of corruption. Another forum of corruption is, of course, procurement. Contracts are given to build this airport, to build this road, to build this power station, but it doesn't go to tender. And prices are being trebled. Prices are being tabled because of corruption. Then subsidies. Even Parliament must complain about subsidies. There are so many subsidies, gold producer subsidies, that are being given nocturnally and opportunistically. So the budget needed to give incentives to law enforcement agencies, to whistleblowers, so that corruption can be fought. Then number 5, we need to deal with the debt question. We need a sustainable issue on the debt question. 6, let's put money to infrastructure and so forth. 7, let's put money to technology. 8, let's put money to industrialization and value addition and beneficiation. That is what the MDC-Alliance would have done very differently. But an economy needs people who are trusted. And nobody trusts Mthuli Ncube. Nobody trusts Emerson Mnangagwa. So whatever they do, people don't trust them. They were caught in flagrante. So it's a waste of time. That's why we need ultimately a political change in this country. We need ultimately to resolve the crisis of legitimacy, because all our economics depends on the existence of a social contract. Do the citizens trust this government and love this government? If they don't trust the government and love that government, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what Nganga you go to. It doesn't matter what Ndunge you go to. It doesn't matter where you go to. It won't work, and it can't work.
Thank you very much, former Finance Minister Tendai Biti and the Vice President of the MDC-Alliance, for getting us to this point of trying to understand the budget and what it holds for the people of Zimbabwe from the point of view of the MDC-Alliance and you as a former Finance Minister. Now, this was the Free Talk in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation and me, your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Now, this on the 9th of December is my birthday, where I actually turn, okay, I'll keep you guessing. So thank you very much.
A bottle of whiskey. I know you love whiskey.
Thank you very much. I've just been off alcohol for over the past few days after, you know, my teeth were caved in by the police, but now I'm free to partake in alcohol again. Thank you very much for the donation of the bottle of whiskey. This is the Free Talk. This is where you hear the alternative voice. This is where your voice counts. This is where Zimbabwe can hear itself. This is Heart Nation. This is Heart and Soul TV and radio. And I, as always, your host, Dara Blessed. This was the Free Talk, proudly brought to you in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation and Heart and Soul TV and radio. We believe that dialogue is the crux of development. When people talk to each other, when people listen to each other, development happens. On Free Talk, we believe in political dialogue, economic dialogue, and social dialogue. Everybody must be heard. Everybody has a right to be heard. Free Talk, talking that moves nation. Free Talk, talking that makes a difference. This is the Free Talk.